You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Is there anything in your book, 23 Things They Don't Teach You About Capitalism, relevant to Malaysia today?
Quite a lot of things. Quite a few of them relate to the kind of problems that are discussed in Malaysia today. My talk is partly based on, for example, Chapter 9 of that book, which says that we do not live in post-industrial economy. So basically trying to argue that this myth about the world having made this transition into a new economy where manufacturing is low-grade activity and now knowledge-based services are the key for economic growth and so on, and how that is wrong, and that is very relevant for the policy discussions in Malaysia today. It also has discussions of how government intervention can play important role in improving economic efficiency and promoting growth and so on. So yes, there are quite a few relevant things there.
Is this service economy, shall we say, trend, is that a common path that many countries in ASEAN are taking simply because it's a bit sexier than manufacturing or it's got a bit more cachet? Why are so many countries like Malaysia following that path?
A lot of ASEAN countries are thinking of shifting to services because they are threatened by Chinese strength in manufacturing. And also they have been convinced by this discourse of post-industrial knowledge economy. The basic problem with that discourse is that we have always lived in a knowledge economy because even in the old days, smokestack industries, what really determined which countries are wealthier than another is basically the control they have over productive knowledge. And a lot of this pressure that now knowledge is driving economic development has also been created by the fact that a lot of these knowledge activities that used to be conducted inside manufacturing companies like engineering and design and so on have been spun off and outsourced. So it looks like these are completely new things, but these activities have always been there. This kind of discourse creates this illusion that now countries can live on services and so on. And a lot of people think, oh, look at Switzerland, look at Singapore, they have become rich on services. Why not us? But these people do not know that actually Switzerland and Singapore have the second and the third highest manufacturing output per capita in the world. So these are very highly industrialized economies. But since people want to believe in this kind of post-industrial service economy story, they just don't even check the facts and say that, oh yeah, these are service economies and we'll follow them.
Someone said in Australia recently that the Americans, say 10 years ago, told them they needed to move into services and away from manufacturing and being natural resource dependent. And they said, and look how the U.S. is doing today and look how we're doing.
That's right.
Do you agree with that perhaps riding that wave would have been detrimental?
Yes, the problem with the U.S. service industry was that a lot of it was basically driven by illusory growth created by deregulation. A lot of service expansion was led by expansion of financial services. A lot of this service growth in America, in Britain, and a number of other countries have been driven by the financial growth that has been permitted through government deregulation. And today we are seeing that it's countries which had more solid bases in the real sector, like mining in Australia or manufacturing in Germany, Finland, that are doing better than the service-driven economies.
You cite in your speech that Budget 2012 in Malaysia, there were announcements of further liberalization in 17 additional service sectors. So it seems like the impression you might have is that the Malaysian government is hedging its bet. It's sort of moving more into the service sector, but still retaining some manufacturing base.
I'm not inherently against services. There are certain services that you actually need to develop in countries like Malaysia in order to develop the manufacturing even further, engineering and things like that. So it all depends on which kind of services that they want to promote. But if they think I can build a vibrant economy on the basis of getting expensive patients for hospitals from abroad, then I think they are very kind of mistaken, because no country has built a strong economy on that kind of services. The point is that most of the high productivity services that have potential for further growth, and these are essentially services that sell to manufacturing companies, finance, engineering, design, consultancy, that they don't sell to individual customers. So yes, by all means, develop services, but you have to be realistic about where the growth potential lies, where productivity growth is possible, and so on.
You also talk about what you call inclusive development. Does that have to do with talent development or the fact that some countries seem to be moving along with infrastructure faster than it can handle with its human resource capacity?
Yes, in the end, human resource is the ultimate sources of prosperity, isn't it? But of course, you should not interpret human resources narrowly only as educations that individuals have. It's more about also about social organization and institutions and so on. But at the end, what makes Germany is the Germans. Yeah? So in that sense, yes, human resource development is critical, and in cases like Malaysia, I understand that there's a growing concern with so-called brain drain because you produce all these capable engineers and so on, but they don't have appropriate jobs that will pay them the right wages, so they move to Singapore and other countries. So these kinds of issues have to be addressed.
Prime Minister has talked a lot about the middle income trap, yet there seems to be an innate tension between the rising salaries, which is the Malaysian government's criteria for developed nation status, concomitant inflation and losing out to cheaper labor pools. So how would you recommend that Malaysia get out of this middle income trap?
Well, the short answer is that it has to upgrade its technologies. Why is it that the Swedes and the Germans can pay 50 times what the Indians pay to their workers and still make money? Because they have the technologies to justify that kind of salary. So if Malaysia wants to move ahead, it cannot do it by cutting wages because however much it tries to cut its wages, there'll be always cheaper countries. So that today is China, tomorrow it will be Vietnam, day after tomorrow it will be Cambodia and Laos. So that the only way that can avoid the current predicament is by moving up. Of course, I'm not saying that it's easy, but that's the only way that we can do it. And for that, of course, it needs a lot of investment in physical equipment, infrastructure, human resources, improving productive organizations, and so on. So the challenge is considerable, but that's the only way that they can deal with it in the long run.
You're from Korea originally, and after independence, the Republic of Korea and Malaysia were roughly at the same stage of development, and now Korea is far more advanced by most matrices. So can you perhaps give your own opinion about what Korea did right and where perhaps Malaysia could have done more or might do more in the future?
Actually, Korea was in the beginning much poorer. So, for example, in 1961, Malaysia had the per capita income of about $215. South Korea had 82. So Malaysia was about 2.5 times richer than Korea. Today, it's exactly the reverse. Korea has $20,000 per capita income. Malaysia has less than 8,000. So Korea is now about 2.5 times richer. Now, these things are never simple, but if you want one-line answer, Korea has achieved more than Malaysia has because it made sure that it builds these national productive capabilities in the form of international standard companies and well-trained workers and high-standard engineers and so on. And Malaysia has unfortunately relied mostly on foreign companies and have not developed these capabilities as much. So, it's a very simplified answer, but I think that's ultimately the difference.
Thank you very much for speaking with us. And we've just been speaking with Professor Ha-Joon Chang from Cambridge University. You've been listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
BFM 89.9, the business station.